Joe, welcome. Here we go. Final episode of season 2. Can you believe it?
I know. And when we first started this podcast, we weren't sure where it was going, but to be here, end of season 2, pretty exciting. And with season 3 already pre-recorded, it's really great to be
I
here.
know, and ready to launch in a couple of weeks. It's pretty exciting too. I can't help but feel now we've done 2 seasons with just an amazing group of people that have been so willing to share their stories with us and all of the listeners, that there are some really interesting points that seem to come out in every episode. Have you noticed that?
I have, and I know that every time we hit end on a recording, we are just blown away by every guest's episode for very different reasons. But as
Mhm.
you say, there are certain threads that do run through each episode. What stood out for you as some of those
Well,
threads?
all of them being able to make sense of these experiences and being able to connect the dots. And often they've talked about it hindsight throughout their episode.
Some of our guests have shared in both season 1 and season 2 that just even preparing for the podcast has helped
Mm.
them to do that. How often do we actually sit down, give ourselves that time to actually pause and reflect on what have I got
Yeah,
out of this
yeah.
experience? What has been the greatest gifts in preparation for the podcast? They've all been able to connect the dots.
Just as a couple of examples for me that really stand out on that point, Joe, Kim, when she made the decision to have a double mastectomy as a prevention for her, the connection that she made between pole dancing, which she'd started many years beforehand for lots of different reasons, how critical that became in her healing in terms of physically, emotionally, her sexuality. And then there was Alan connecting the dots of his experience. He had a very significant health issue in potentially having a heart attack, and then how his next journey of healing that on his own actually led him to a whole complete new path. I find that really fascinating.
For me, what stands out is both of them have been able to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
Both of
Yeah.
them have been able to listen to really something deep inside that society wasn't telling them, other people weren't actually say do those things, but really were able to listen to their intuition. So that's what I hear when you unpack that.
That whole level of they've deepened their relationship with themselves. A couple of standouts for that. Sue, whose relationship was enhanced by the birth of her son, even though she was only 17. She had to carry that secret for so long. And then there was Louise. Louise had a physical illnesses that literally stopped her in her tracks, and she really needed to get to understand her body and her emotions to actually help the healing process that led her on to new careers.
I'm hearing again the word intuition, but then as you say, connecting with themselves, deeply going back to self, trusting what they need and strengthening the relationship with themselves,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. And with that, drawing in others to actually support them at the same time. That was another thing for me, that connection with others, realizing that by reaching out, either sharing a story, seeking the right support, made all the difference in the world.
Definitely. And it's interesting, Anne, I was reflecting on that myself, that last time when we did a wrap up of season 1, again, a really strong theme was that the importance of reaching out and
Mm.
asking for help. A lot of our guests have shared that in both seasons. But what stood out was Justin's journey, where it wasn't about asking for help, it was actually about accepting help. So
Yeah.
that really strongly resonated with me. So a few years ago, I ran a workshop and I said, put your hand up if you'd happily help other people. And pretty much everyone in the workshop put their hand up. Then I said, keep your hand up if you'd happily ask for help. And a
Mhm.
lot of people put their hand down. So there's this interesting concept that we'll readily give help, but very rarely do we ask for help. But I'd be curious if I then said, and I didn't at the time, but if I said to people, the same group, put your hand up or keep your hand up if you'd accept help. Because
Uh-huh.
that's kind of a
Yeah.
different thing again. For Justin's journey, it was his father who said it's just as much about your community or your
Hmm.
village as it is about you. And that really resonated with me. I had an experience very recently where I saw that firsthand and it stuck with me. And like a lot of people, I very readily reach out and offer help to others. There was a particular friend that recently I'd reached out and offered help. Then she bumped into me at a point where I was really unwell. I was getting a third lot of antibiotics, and she just looked at me and she said, "What can I do? What can I do? Can I make some soup for you?" And in that moment, I was tempted to say, "No, I'm fine, thanks." And I probably did say that. And she actually stopped me and she said, "Jo, it's the least that I can do because of what you've done for me." I realized it was a gift both for me and for her by accepting help. Really was a powerful moment. And I froze her soup and I'm still weeks later eating her beautiful, nourishing soup. Just reminded me of what Justin's strong message was about the power of accepting help.
That sense of deepening that relationship is just so intrinsic in all of our lives. We talk about it, don't we, about community, we talk about connectedness. I'm sure there's more of us that are willing to go out and offer our support, but how many of us are really willing to let that support come in? And each of the stories of each of our guests, it was integral that they did accept help. They wouldn't be where they are today. And even making sense of their journey was helped by having someone else come into their world and fully understanding what they were going through. Next point that was clear from everyone was how when people act from their clear beliefs and their own value set. I think back to John, who stammered, and he very early on taught himself to forgive himself and therefore others, and that became a lifelong value for him. And how powerful that's been in his life.
Yeah, his story was extremely powerful and certainly sat with me for many months, and still often I'll reach for what he had to offer with us about forgiveness, and that idea that forgiveness is about, if you break it up into two words, forgive, it's giving for yourself. And so he learned to forgive himself. And then his father, who modeled forgiving the person that, due to drink driving, had an accident and his brother lost his life, and for his father to model that forgiveness ingrained in John that deep belief, value, strength of the power of forgiveness, and how he then lived his whole life through that lens.
Oh, incredibly. And also that sort of lens I throw on Georgina's story with her great aunt Bud. Georgina knew she had a clear belief she needed to tell Bud's story, the truth of Bud's story, even though it is a well-known World War II story, that people didn't really know the insight. And she also had a belief that she needed to carry generational grief and actually heal that grief. And that was what her driver was. It was that conviction to do that, even though there was lots of moments where I'm sure she felt, what am I doing this for? And ending up writing an incredible book about that and giving it to the world.
And I think what stood out for me with Georgina, with that conviction, she mentions early on she would have taken on board everyone's opinions and judgment and, oh, you can't write a book like this and you can't expose the truth and don't do this, don't do
Yeah.
that. She actually came to a place where she was able to let go of that judgment, and she was
Mm.
able to not let others' opinions affect her in a
Yeah.
way that would stop her moving with purpose and passion. And that stood up for quite a few of our guests,
Yeah.
that they were able to actually put judgment aside, that there was judgment there, but
Yes.
they were able to actually put it aside and still do what was really important to them. Kylie knew intuitively what she needed, and she just listened to what was important and didn't let other people's judgment and opinion sway her. They were two really powerful examples.
Yeah, I agree. What's interesting and what we're really talking about here, Joe, how each of these different frames applies to each of the guests. And that's what is becoming clear now that we've done 2 seasons, that there's a lot of this that just hits across the board for everyone. And the other one for me was arriving at a sense of deep knowing and direction. You can tie intuition into that, but there's a piece around each of them have found core to their journey unfolding and to them coping with their challenge. Diana, she didn't understand finances. Her marriage broke down. She was in a space where she had what I think a $50,000 debt, if I remember. Is that right? And then all of a sudden find a financial independence where she basically abdicated all of that responsibility to her husband. But she knew deep down that she couldn't crumble, that she needed to find a path forward. That sense of that deeper knowing is so important to be the thread that pulls people through.
Mm.
The other one is Lauren at 17 with such a huge shame story. Not her shame story, but a story that was placed upon her and not feeling good enough. And yet she traversed a number of years where there was a very thin thread for her to hang on to. But she did talk about having a deeper sense. She said, I realised that I did have a fight in me and I did want to get through it.
Lauren's story is certainly very powerful, and you mentioned the shame. Both she and Georgina were able to speak out about something that
Yeah.
had been held in silence. We talk about the fact that shame is strengthened by silence. When Lauren talked about it, it was a very physical sense. It felt like a snake had wrapped around her body. We intuitively hold it into ourselves. By the very nature of shame, we feel that we have to keep it close to ourselves. But
Mhm.
both she and Georgina showed the power of speaking the truth
Yep.
and saying those words out loud. Shame is lessened when it's spoken. They actually showed us that. It was so powerful hearing two women with very, very different stories, but both stories of shame, how empowering it was to actually speak that out loud.
I agree. In a completely different frame, but around that same sense of arriving at a deeper knowing. And I want to context this with a level of guilt. And this is Kerry's story with a mum. All she wanted to do was love and care for her mum. She had her living with her for so long, but there became a point where, and Kerry said, I don't know how to keep her safe. She had a deep sense of knowing that that's what she needed to do, but she was fighting a level of guilt to actually allow her mum to go into care where she would have 24-hour support, where she would be well cared for. That was the thing that usurped that sense of, I'm not showing my mum love by putting her into home, but the deep knowing was that the most important thing was that she was safe.
That highlighted the concept that the guilt will never go away, but she was able to hold two things at the same time. She was able to hold that guilt, but also hold that love and knowing that that was the right thing for her mum and
Yeah.
also the right thing for her, that she couldn't give from an empty place. It's a lovely reminder for ourselves that guilt can coexist with love and we can process it. That was a really good reminder
Mm.
for those of us that are going through something similar, that I just have to listen to the guilt and the guilt is going to what be the one that leads. Kerry's story really reminded us that you can hold both at the
Oh,
same time.
absolutely.
But the other one that I resonated with personally as well was Lauren's story about finding joy. I just love that she reconnected to joy and how important that was in her story. In her growth, that was a really important part of healing for her. And I
Mhm.
don't think we talk about it enough.
No.
I came across something really interesting that said that joy isn't something you chase, it's something that returns to you.
Oh, I like that.
So I really liked that. Joy has been something that I've, throughout my life, recognized the importance of joy.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, 2 years ago, through my belief that having more joy in my life is something I wanted to do,
Mhm.
I started a group with a girlfriend, a group of women, a bit like a book club, but
Yeah.
without the book. And
Okay.
it's all going to be about joy and fun. We called it Good Things, a group of women that most of them didn't know each other. There were 12 women, found ourselves in this group called Good Things, and every second month, someone's in charge of pulling together a good thing event. And it
Ah,
is so much fun. We only have to organise something once every 2 years. So it's
yeah.
actually much easier than a book club. We've done go-kart racing, we've done pottery, we've done walks on the beach. Our next event is an escape room. I'm already looking for joy in my life independently, but it's just a little added bonus, and experiencing joy with others is just so wonderful. So it was just a lovely reminder from Lauren about the importance of more joy in our life and how important that is for healing and growth.
I absolutely think it's about whether you start a group called Good Things. We've got a group of us that meet once a month and we call it our Friday night wine girls. But the wines become completely irrelevant, can I say? It's more about the chats and the catching up. And we're an eclectic group of women, but we just have so much fun. In fact, we've done a little travel together and it's just pure joy. It's just some time for us to be in the space of that joy. So I couldn't agree with you more, Joe. Lauren really highlighted that with doing swing dancing. That was what was giving her joy.
Yeah. It's just a lovely reminder that there's simple ways like joining a group, starting a group, finding something that brings back so
Yep.
joy can return.
And
Yeah.
realizing that it comes from within, not without. The
Mm.
activity or the wine or whatever is not really the relevant point. It's that sense of connection with self and then with others. And I love the fact that all of our guests have found their pathway through all of it. And all of them will say, even though the event or the challenge may not have been joyful, they've managed to find something that's really held in their heart as a result of that.
The other thing that's beautifully expressed throughout all the stories is the importance of the small steps. I don't think we've ever had a guest that said, I had this challenge and then
Yeah.
boom, it
Oh,
instantly went away the minute I
yeah,
did
yeah,
this. And so Lauren's reminder also that there is no easy path, that
yeah.
if you're doing all these things and none of it's working, that's actually okay. It does often take time, and it is the small steps. And I think most of our guests reminded us that it was often the small steps. So you said that as one of her tips. Deanna said that as one of her
Yep.
tips. It's just the small steps. For any of us going through something, that it
Mm.
can take time, and it's often the small steps that add up over time to healing and growth.
I absolutely agree. And sitting alongside that, what thoughts we have in our own minds and how important it is to actually notice that the I can'ts versus I cans. That was a general theme that it's okay to change your mindset and you don't have to be as harsh on yourself, whether John doing that around forgiveness, whether it be Lauren around her connection when she went down by the ocean with nature and thought, I'm part of much bigger. And even though she was feeling a lot of guilt and shame at that point, it didn't have to determine her story forward.
Yeah, no, good point, Anne. And I'm going to be sneaky here and say
Uh,
that I'm going to ask myself, what are my top tips?
okay,
And
you go for it. What
my
are your
top
top tips?
tips are listen to our podcast yourself and come up with your own top tips. Guests have just had the most amazing tips and insights and greatest gifts. So many of the
Mm,
messages that they tell their 10-year-old selves. I get goosebumps, Anne,
yeah,
when our
I
guests
do
tell us
too.
that.
Yeah.
So my top tip is if you haven't listened to season 2, listen to the ones that resonate with you
Yeah.
because our guests just have some really powerful messages and what a gift it's been to us, Anne, that they've
Oh,
been willing to share them with us.
I sit in a state of feeling amazed at the power within each of us for some of the journeys that people have had to deal with, and yet what they've learnt, where they come from, how they can share their tips with others. And they're really sound. They don't acknowledge that their tips are right for everyone, but make you reflect. Joe, aside from the recording of the podcast, going back and reading some of the newsletters, there is questions down the bottom for each of us to reflect on, to get us thinking. That's a really important part of self knowledge and self reflection that we can all do at any time.
Certainly, each newsletter has been a joy to create,
Mm,
and I've certainly reflected on those questions. So,
absolutely.
what are you looking forward to in season 3?
Gosh, as you said earlier, we've got most of them in the can now. What am I looking forward to most? Another group of diverse individuals with very different stories. First up is Nadia. She's a well respected journalist, currently working for the ABC in WA. Oh my goodness, what she had to go through while she was literally in the newsroom and finding out something about her dad was heartbreaking. But what she's done with it and how she's evolved, it's amazing. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, me too, Anne. I'm looking forward to sharing all of the stories. Vince, who truck
Yep.
driver in his 50s, when his marriage broke down, the insight,
Mm,
the reflection, the ability to dig deep and have
mm,
a close look at himself, at
mhm,
his childhood, about how he showed up in the world and how he has grown through that experience, which was at the time devastating for him when his marriage
mhm.
broke down. His willingness to talk about it, and I think that was, yeah, that was really powerful. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to
absolutely. It's a privilege for you and I to be able to share the microphone with all these wonderful people and for them to share their journeys and very deeply, not just a superficial, this was my journey, but to look at how they felt, what it's given them, where they are now, how they've connected all of the dots together, how they've created something powerful that's made them who they are today out of often the worst of a challenge that could confront them. So, Joe, to finish up, if you want to be informed of each of the episodes, then please go and sign up to Substack. The handle is @What'sFear, and it's free. You just get one email once a fortnight telling you about the episode that's coming up and also the newsletter that goes with it. You can listen on Substack or you can listen on your favourite platform, whether that be Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio. They're all there. Connect in whichever way you want to. And also you can follow us on Instagram, and our handle on that is whatsfear_podcast. We've also got a page on LinkedIn, which is What's Fear Got to Do with It. Feel free to subscribe to that as well. And again, you'll get all of the information about upcoming episodes. I think that's about it. Joe, is there anything else that you want to do to wrap up today?
Encouraging people to reach out if there's a particular episode that resonated with them, if there's any guests that they would like to hear, whether they'd like to be on our podcast, feel free to reach out to us on any of those various platforms. We'd love to hear from people.
And in the meantime, Joe and I really, what we're wanting to do is to encourage people to have conversation, to reach out to each other, to stay connected, to feel part of a community that you feel really supported by. So on that note, Joe, I'll look forward to sharing the mic with you next season.
Sounds great. Thanks, Anne.